One of the biggest questions that people face when it comes to ads buying is how exactly are we influencing people to buy our product? And to start off this discussion, I want to just go over the very simple principle of the supply and demand graph. Now, you might have seen this before. You have demand, where as price decreases, more and more people are willing to buy your product, depending on how much their willingness to buy is. For people who greatly want your product, they're willing to pay a very high amount. But the more that you want to sell, the wider the audience you want to touch on, the more you have to sort of reduce your price to incentivize the people who see less value in it. A golfer is already going to want to buy a new tee that might get them an extra 10 yards off of the tee box. But the more casual that golfer is, the less they see the value in the product, the less they're willing to pay for it. Then you also have the amount that you're wanting to produce. As price increases, the more you're going to want to produce because you're incentivized to earn extra money from it. And at that center point is the equilibrium, where you create the exact amount of products that is being demanded at a price that both you and the consumer agrees on. Now, the reality of the situation is very rarely does a business exist at this equilibrium. Typically, there's going to be some swing in the market where they may start by overproducing or underproducing. They may realize that the price is too high or the price is too low. And of course, there are different trends in the market that may influence demand, and that's going to influence how much you're willing to produce. So in this situation, let's say that theoretically you're at this price point, we'll say $50, and the equilibrium is here around $40. And you have this amount of supply that you're wanting to produce. Well, there's two approaches that you can take to influence the buying process, try and move some of that inventory. And the first is the most predominant, which is reducing the price or running a sale. It's as simple as once you reduce the price, you're attracting more of the customers. You're moving up on the demand curve, such that you're selling more of the product. The thing is that ultimately this is not very sustainable. You've set your price for a reason. Maybe it's to protect your margins, to cover your operating costs. So reducing the price, whether it be for a one-time sale and promotion or for a long-term new change in the overall pricing structure, you're ultimately sacrificing some of the sustainability of the business by moving that price down to attract new customers. In the ads platform, we love it because obviously this is going to make it easier to bring more customers through the door. The cost of generating an order, attracting a new customer goes down. You can scale the ads program at a higher volume during the discounted period, but it's not sustainable for the business. The other methodology is to introduce new creative types and messaging in a way that can potentially attract new audiences. And what this does is this actually shifts the demand curve out such that you're going to be able to sustain that higher price point that you were originally running at. Now, going back to the topic of the golfer, maybe there's a way of collaborating with an Instagram influencer who has an audience who he can attest or she can attest to the extra yardage that they can sustain off of the tee box with this new high performance tee. Maybe it's getting some sort of press coverage from Golfer's Digest or something like that. Something that creates this social signal that's going to influence the buyer into thinking, you know what, actually, I do need the extra performance from this product. If somebody else can attest to it, well, then maybe it's right for me. Or maybe you have a product where you're servicing a very specific niche and you find that you've maximized your volume of sales within that niche. Well, what is that additional extra audience that we could touch on, try some new messaging and influence their perspective of the product such that they're willing to pay that higher price point. And all of these activities that are happening within the ad account are going to shift that demand out, allowing you to make more sales at that price point and allow us to scale the ads platform more profitably. So this is a good way to think about your overall sales, your marketing, and how it can ultimately influence the sales volume. You have your standard supply and demand curve. You have some place that you're currently operating at. You could reduce the price or run a sale to boost those sales in a short term period, although this is typically not as sustainable. Or you test new creative types, you test new messaging, you try and touch upon new audiences. We take care of that within the ads platform by introducing new audiences into the ads campaigns, people that we think might be receptive to this new messaging, this new sales angle, or maybe there's just like a collaboration, a partnership, something like that that adds social proof to your product, increases the perceived value of the product, and then you can sustain sales at that higher price point by shifting that demand curve out rather than reducing your pricing.